Good morning, students. Today we'll discuss about ecological niche. It is a very special place. Each and every individual it occupies in nature. It is a special place. The ecological niche is a role and a position of a species has in the environment, how it meets its need for food, shelter, how it survives, and how it reproduces. Ecological niche is special for each and every species. No two species have the same ecological niche. The species niche includes all its interaction with the biotic and abiotic factor of its environment. Biotic factors are living things, whereas abiotic factors are non-living things. It is advantageous for a species to occupy a unique niche in an ecosystem because it reduces the amount of competition for resources that species will encounter. The ecological niche describes the functional position and role of organism within its environment. An ecological niche will be comprised of various components including the habitat in which the organism lives, the activity pattern of the organism, that is, period of time during which it is active, the resources it obtains from the environment, maybe the food, territorial boundaries, the interaction that occurs with other species in the region, that is, the competition, predator-prey relationships, proto-cooperation. According to Odom, the habitat of organism is the address, whereas ecological niche is its profession. Two organisms may be found in the same habitat, but they do not occupy the same ecological niche. Each play a different role in its habitat. Different animals that occupy similar ecological niche in different geographical regions are known as ecological equivalents. Very important term, ecological equivalents. That is, different animals that occupy similar ecological niche in different geographical regions. They are known as ecological equivalents. According to competitive exclusion principle, two species cannot occupy the same ecological niche in the habitat if they are competing for the same resource. When species compete in niche, natural selection will first move to lessen the dependence of species on the shared resources. If one species is successful, it reduces the competition. If neither evolves to reduce competition, then the species that can more efficiently exploit the resource will thin out and the other species will eventually become extinct. Very important. See here in this example, that is, it is Paramecium aurelia. If it is kept alone, it will grow with time. Similarly, Paramecium caudatum, when grown alone, it will grow with time. But when both these species they are grown together, see here, only one species will survive. That is, Paramecium aurelium will survive and Paramecium caudatum will die. The competitive exclusion principle tells us that two species cannot have exactly the same niche in a habitat and stably coexist. That is because species with identical niches also have identical needs, which means they would compete for precisely the same resource. So this is a very famous example of competitive exclusion. That is Paramecium aurelium and Paramecium caudatum. When grown individually in the lab, both species thrive. But when they are grown in the same test tube or habitat with a fixed amount of nutrients, both grow more poorly and Paramecium aurelium eventually overcompetes Paramecium caudatum for food, leading to Paramecium caudatum's extinction. So three aspects of ecological niche or three types of ecological niche are the habitat niche or spatial niche, trophic niche, and multidimensional or hypervolume niche. So first of all, we'll take up the spatial or habitat niche. Joseph Grinnell explained spatial niche as habitat niche represents the physical space occupied by the organism. It is a habitat occupied by many species. Each species is confined to a microhabitat. No two species can occupy the same habitat. Example of habitat niche was provided by O'Neill also. He identified 7 species of millipede living in a forest floor of a maple oak forest. All the 7 species occupy the same basic trophic level as all are detritus feeder. The log of maple oak has several gradients in decomposition stage from the center to position underneath the leaf litter. These gradients constitute distinct microhabitat and each species of millipede occupies specific different microhabitat. See here, this is in the case of warble niches. On the same tree, these three important species, that is bay-breasted warble, Cape May warble, and ramped warble, warbler, both the three species, they occupy different position on the same tree. So warblers, they have different niches. Now coming to the second is the trophic niche. John Elton was the first who used the term niche as functional status of organism in its community. He thus emphasized the importance of energy relations and thus concept is designed as trophic niche. Trophic niche is concerned with trophic position of the organism. In this picture, we can see that feeding ecological niche for wading birds. Some, for example, flamingos, they consume the food from the base. The doubling ducks, they consume the food from the slope. Then the pullovers, they have the food on the, you can say, the shores. So they all are the aquatic birds, yet they consume food from different places to avoid the competition. This is known as trophic niche. Then is the multidimensional or hypervolume niche. In 1957, Hutchinson suggested the niche could be visualized as multidimensional niche or hypervolume niche. Within this, the environment permits an individual species to survive indefinitely. In this case, the niche can be measured, mathematically manipulated, and represents in climograph. According to him, not only a single factor is responsible for designing the niche of the organism. There are various factors. It can be temperature, humidity, it can be light, it can be pH at the same time. And ultimately, the niche of the individual, it becomes 3D, three-dimensional or multidimensional. So position of two species. When the curve of M and N totally overlap, or when M is equal to N. M is one species, N is the another species. The utilization of resources by the two species is said to be identical. When such a situation does occur, it would expect that competition exclusion would eliminate one of the species from the system. When both the species, they will work, when the distance between these two species, that is M and N, is far apart. More the closeness, more the overlapping of the M and N species, more will be the competition. So such niche overlap indicates the intensity of competition between the species of community for a particular resource. If the two peaks of distinct distribution of species M and N are moved closer together, the niche overlap will increase. So when these two species peak is far apart, the distance between the two niche peaks, they are more stability in the species distribution is there. If the peak is less closer or overlapping, the competitive exclusion, it will be there. One species will be eliminated because of the competition. Now we are having two types of niches as fundamental and a realized niche. Hutchinson introduced the term fundamental and realized niche. Fundamental niche is a niche that the organism would occupy in the absence of competition or predators. When the fundamental niche of two species overlap, then the two species are said to be competing with one and another. However, in nature, two species do not overlap or compete for food, even if they eat the item of the same size, as they can look for them in different places. Most well-integrated communities like coral reef, climax forest, etc. are made up of species with non-overlapping niches. Realized niche is referred to as the role of organism actually played in the community. Hutchinson viewed that overcome of interspecific competition would lead either to extinction or development of difference, allowing coexistence. So if two factors we consider, moisture and temperature, the whole of the graph, it will represent the fundamental niche, but the realized niche is very smaller portion in that fundamental niche, which is actually occupied by the species in the ecosystem. In nature, the realized niche of organism is smaller than the fundamental niche. So niche differentiation describes the way by which competing species use the environment differently in order to exist. If two species with identical niches compete, two distinct outcomes are possible. One is competitive exclusion. One species will use resources more efficiently and drive the other species to local extinction. Second is resource partnering. Two species will alter their use of niches to avoid direct competition, allowing for coexistence. So advantages of ecological niche: animals can escape competition by occupying different ecological niche. The ecological niche occupied by the species is favorable to it, and it furnish a suitable substratum and microclimate. Segregation of organism into niches avoid confusion of activities in the community and give a more orderly and efficiently life pattern for each species. Segregation of different species in a particular niche results in full exploitation of all available resources. Thank you www.google.com for providing us beautiful pics so that we can explain the topic well.